Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Veronica, but around here I'm known as Data Geek. So I received a great comment from one of my viewers recently that said, how do you usually set up your data analysis environment? Well, I love this question because the answer depends on the project I am working on. In my day job at a government agency, I analyze all kinds of different types of data, sometimes pulled from Excel, sometimes extracted from a SQL query that is from a live database, and other times I'm cleaning up raw data. But before we dive in, let's explain what is a data analyst. So a data analyst is someone who turns raw data into useful insights. But depending on the project or the organization, a data analyst often wears many hats. So in my case, I work in a government agency and I'm not just a data analyst. I'm also a business analyst, which is helping define what problem we're solving with the data. I play the role of data engineer, which is figuring out how to even access and prepare the data. And of course, I'm the data analyst, making sense of the data and turning it into dashboards and reports for stakeholders to use. So let me walk you through a common real world workflow I deal with almost daily. So first, the problem. A director or a program manager needs to understand something like how many individuals with drug-related charges were eligible for probation last year. Next would be the data access. So now it's on me to locate the data. That could mean pulling from a SQL database, requesting a report, or digging through Excel CSV files. Once you have the data, next would be cleaning the data. Almost always there is never a cleaned up data set. Most of the time it's messy values, inconsistent formatting, duplicates. I use Excel or Python to clean the data. Now you have the data, you clean the data. Next, you would analyze and report. So once the data is structured, I use tools like Power BI or Excel to build visualizations such as dashboards to tell a story or pivot tables with Excel. So again, often it's usually on the request itself, what do they need? Sometimes they just want numbers, sometimes they want just a table, and other times they just might want a dashboard. So when you ask me, how do I set up my data analysis environment? So honestly, it depends on the request, and that's the reality. Also, to mention the downside of being a data analyst. So let's be real, being a data analyst isn't always smooth. One big challenge is urgency. Sometimes the request is dropped on your desk, maybe at the end of the day, and they want the results as of yesterday. This can be challenging and stressful because first, where do you need to get the data from? What do they actually need? Trying to prepare this in a small amount of time. So another issue is finding the right data, especially if it's stored in multiple places or nobody's sure what table to use. So you've got to be flexible, resourceful, and sometimes creative to make things work. So for example, let's use a real life request. Let's say I received a request from leadership or another department asking, can you analyze recent incarceration trends by crime type and probation eligibility? I always analyze the question saying, okay, can you analyze recent? So recent would be a keyword because how recent? Would it be the last year, the last 2 years? So sometimes you have to come back with questions of what really do they need? And sometimes they might not even know what they need. So you have to be clear of what you are gathering for them. When they say recent, let's just say they want the last 2 years. So they want the last 2 years of incarceration trends by crime type and probation eligibility. So we will try to gather some information for this request. This is a data set that I'm using for this tutorial. So this is just a sample data set. Usually in my real world data requests, say for example, I was able to pull this out of a live SQL database. I have everything they need for me to answer their question. So again, the question was, can you analyze recent incarceration trends by crime type and probation eligibility? So looking at this data, you see we have crime type, we see we have recent, which we confirmed with the requester. What do you mean by recent? So say they want the last 2 years. So we have our year. And then probation eligibility, we have that. We have everything we need to answer that question. So first off, I want to make sure this data set does not have any null values for the variables we will be using. Also, I want to go ahead and remove any duplicate values under inmate ID. So we want to capture each individual and not capture any of their duplicate IDs. So again, showing you what I do in a real world scenario, I always make sure to make a copy of my tab. What I do in Excel is I click this tab here, and at the bottom you'll see a document, my control key until you see a plus sign. Then I let go, and now it just made a duplicate tab with my data. So I always keep my original tab and then make a copy of it. So the copied one is where I clean my data. So I accidentally mess up or I lose something, I always will have my original data. So I never ever work in my original data. I always make a copy. So now that we're in my copied tab, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight this whole data set by clicking on the top left corner where there's an upside down triangle. Click that, it highlights all of your data. Now go to your data tab and go remove duplicates. So we're going to remove all the duplicates from inmate ID. So right now all of your columns are checked. We're going to click unselect columns. Now if you're doing this with me, you see only column A, B, and C, make sure this my data has headers is selected. So it reads all of your headers. So now inmate ID and OK. Now it says 7 duplicate values found and removed. So now you have 100 unique values remain. Click OK. So now we have 100. Next thing I do is I'll go up here to filters under your data tab, go to filters, make sure that's selected, and you'll have your filters on. So what I like to do is I like to look at each column and just scroll down, see if there's any NAs or blanks, and there is not. So everything looks good. So the variable I'm going to be using is crime type. There's no null values and there's no blanks, so it looks perfect. Also, probation eligibility has yes and no. There's no blanks or NAs. So everything looks good and ready to go. So if they want just numbers, what I can do is very easy and simple. So this data request is not that hard because I was able to find my data, clean it, which looks pretty much cleaned. All I had to do was unduplicate. So now I'm going to highlight this data again. I'm going to go up here to the top Insert tab and Pivot Table from Table Range and click OK. Now I can create a pivot table. So again, let's go to this variable here, which is crime type. So it's going to show all of these in my crime type. So assault, battery, drug, fraud. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my pivot table and drag and drop the crime type. So here it is, click, drag and drop in rows. So now it's in my rows. So if I want to do click and drag values, it's going to show me each of these. I'm going to go ahead and go up here to this drop down and uncheck blank. Okay, so it gets rid of that blank column. And now we have 12 assaults, 11 batteries, 8 drug possession, 11 fraud. So, and then altogether there's 100 assault types. So now they wanted to know the eligibility of probation. So here we have our probation eligibility, yes or no. So if you want to, you can go ahead and go to probation eligibility. You can drag and drop into your filters and just select yes from the drop down. So click here, drop down and click yes, where it only shows yes. So now we know that there are 45 altogether. Instead of the filters, say you want columns, so you can click and drag and drop into columns. And here it has a yes and no. So now it breaks it down by probation, rather there is probation or there's not probation by assault. Okay, so then also to keep in mind, they wanted the last 2 years. We'll go to admission year and drag and drop in filters and only select the last 2 years. So to do that, you go select multiple items, make sure that's clicked, unselect all of them, so you don't get all of the numbers, you only want the last 2 years. So 2022 and 2023 and push OK. So now you're showing only the last 2 years of data. You have your crime type, and then you have your probation eligibility or not. So now what I like to do is I'll clean up my table. I'll just highlight this and do a Control-C to copy. And then I will paste it in a new sheet. Instead of doing a paste, I right-click and paste only the values, so paste options. Then I'll have a little clipboard 1, 2, 3. So you click that, and it only pastes the values, not the actual whole pivot table. Now you can go ahead and clean up your table. So I can highlight it, my lines within the table, get rid of things I don't need, the row labels, I can get rid of that. This crime type, I'm going to do a wrap text. It's under your home page, and then merge and center. And then I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, make it bold. And then your column labels, I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these 2 here, columns, and do a wrap text and merge center. I'm going to call this eligibility. And then now I'm going to only highlight these 3 columns here and center. And I want to center these numbers also. And then I will also do that bold. Then I'm going to go ahead and do some color here. Now here on top, I'm going to go ahead and put like a caption. So I'm going to highlight from A2 to D2. Then I'm going to do a wrap text and merge center. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this into incarceration for the last 2 years by crime type and probation eligibility. Next, I will do a visualization. So I will go ahead and create that next by simply highlighting the data for crime, eligibility, yes or no, and the numbers. So then I go to insert and go to my recommended charts, and you can look at that, or you can go ahead and select any of ones that you think would be good for this analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and just select this one here, the clustered columns. And now I have my visual. I can go ahead and do a design if I want to. So we'll just do this one here. And then again, what I usually do is I'll just copy this header here and paste it in here. This is just an easy example that I created here for this tutorial. Sometimes it could be more complex. Sometimes you might have more than one data set. But you can use like Power Pivot, you can use Power Query. That's for another video, but there's so many different ways to capture your data analysis. So always try to brainstorm and try to figure out a way that will be easier for you to capture and gather the data for presentation. So that's a wrap. This is just one of the ways I set up my data analysis environment. But the key takeaway is this. Your environment starts with understanding the request, then moves you through the data access, cleaning the data, analyzing the data, and reporting the data. And while tools like Python, SQL, Power BI are important, your thinking process is what drives real value. So keep that in mind. So if you felt that this video was helpful, please like and subscribe. And let me ask you this question. What's your biggest challenge when setting up your data workflow? And what are your learning data tools? Drop a comment in the comments below. I like to hear from you guys. Thank you again for watching. And again, please like, subscribe. I will see you on the next video.